Hello, welcome to a video lecture that I've prepared for you with my comments and concerns about your rough drafts of the online review assignment. Okay, so one of the first things I wanted to draw your attention to is the characteristic features of reviews. This is straight out of our text. So relevant information about the subject and criteria, I'm supposed to say for the evaluation, sorry about that. And so we need to think about what are our criteria and how we're going to represent them in the essay. A well-supported evaluation, so basically we need to think about supporting evidence that will back up our use of these criteria. And so what I encourage people to do is in the body of the essay, the evaluation and analysis section, that basically if you can work your criteria into each topic sentence for your body paragraphs. So let's say you're doing a restaurant review and then you want to say, one of the things I like best about this restaurant is the quality of service. And so with that type of a topic sentence, we have indicated our criterion is singular, very clearly in that statement. One of the things I like best about this restaurant is the quality of service. We've clearly identified the criterion that's being used there. And then throughout the rest of the body paragraph, we want to talk about the quality of the service at the restaurant. So, so your criteria should be kind of your guiding force throughout the body of the essay, and then backing it up with supporting evidence, hard, factual data that you can back that up with. So things that you experienced and etc. So, so this is one of the areas that I noticed a lot of concern about your rough drafts. And so let me come back to that. Attention to the audience's needs and expectations. So we need to understand who our audience is and how much they know about the topic, how much we need to fill in. So we're not just writing, I know that on a certain level you're writing for me as your instructor and I hold the grade book and such, but in terms of identifying an online review site, we need to think about the type of people who would come to that review site and what they know about the topic already and what you need to explain to them. So we can't assume just a general audience. We have to assume an interested audience and oftentimes an informed audience. People who check out reviews usually know something about the topic of the review, and they're just trying to see what other people think about it. So think about who your audience is in terms of the online review site that you're targeting for this, and what their needs and expectations are. An authoritative tone, basically we don't mean a heavy-handed authoritative tone, but that you have done your homework. So that you have, if you're doing a movie review, you've watched that movie 2 or 3 times on DVD, to get it all, to have sufficient experience with it to have this authoritative tone and make this evaluation. Or a restaurant review, you've gone to that restaurant 2 or 3 or 4 times so that you've been able to kind of gauge whether the first time you went was an exceptionally good time or an exceptionally bad day for them. And so by seeing a restaurant over several different visits, different times a day and stuff, we can kind of ameliorate those aberrations that are, very good days, very bad days, and kind of get a good consistent impression of, in this case, a restaurant that we're reviewing. So we want to be able to relate to the reader that we know what we're talking about. We've experienced this. So awareness of the ethics of reviewing, and my main concern in that regard is don't fall into PR or advertising language. Sometimes people get overly praiseworthy in their evaluation, and it's almost off-putting to the reader. it sounds like they must have gotten paid to write this review. So be even-handed, fair-minded in your evaluation, and there are some ethics to take into consideration. Okay, moving along. This particular slide you should have seen before. I mentioned it in the very first video lecture about the online review assignment, and maybe it's a bit confusing because maybe there's too much text on the left of this slide and kind of hard to relate to what's on the right or something. I tried to make it clear, but let me break it down a little bit. So just looking at the right-hand side of the screen, you're going to have an introduction where you kind of introduce your topic. Let's say it's Mexican food, and then you transition into Mexican restaurant, or particular type of movie, so comedy or romance, and then transition into the particular movie that you're talking about. So we do have kind of this funneling down quality to it. And we do have a working thesis of sorts in this introduction. So the working thesis might be, for a new take on Mexican food, be sure to check out Julio's Mexican restaurant in Westchester. So I don't think there is a Julio's Mexican restaurant, but that works as a thesis without really giving away the entire evaluation. We get the sense that it's overall positive, but we're going to read on and find out more. So the paragraph right after the introduction, I call it a background or a bridge paragraph. In classical rhetoric, this is actually called narratio. And so the intro is called exordium. So it gets the reader interested, gets them involved. And then narratio, this background or bridge, we're kind of taking a step back after the introduction and making sure that everyone's on the same page. So for a book review or a movie review, this is where we're going to put in the plot summary. For a restaurant review, this is where we're going to put in a description of the restaurant. We have to keep it compartmentalized to about one paragraph. Basically, by the, if you're double spacing this at this point, by the time you get to the top of the second page, we need to be applying your criteria. We need to start into that evaluation and analysis section. So what I'm seeing in most of the drafts that were submitted, that they tend to be movie reviews or something, that the plot summary has taken over. It has gone on for 3 or 4 pages. And sometimes I'm not even sure that there is an evaluation going on, and then it just kind of wraps up. So this is one of the dangers of this particular assignment, is that, I mentioned that you have to kind of control what you're doing in different parts of your essay. And what happens is people get into that plot summary and it takes over, and you have to reel it in. You have to control it, keep it on that first page, and get to your evaluation and analysis by the top of the second page. So really important. If I had to grade the rough drafts at this point, I just give you credit for turning in your rough draft. If I had to grade them, I'd see a lot of C's going on at this point, because that summary, overview, synopsis of things has taken over the entire essay. So we need to reel that back in, keep it to a paragraph. And then what I'm saying with the paragraph after that, the reason I put parentheses around it, this is your criteria paragraph, but it's optional. So that's the reason for the parentheses. In a formal critique, we probably would have a statement of criteria right there. In order for this thing to be good, it needs to have X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C. And then we would apply those criteria throughout. What happens most often in reviews, movie reviews, restaurant reviews, etc., is that the reviewer doesn't actually state the criteria in a separate section. And so, again, that's why I put it in parentheses. But the criteria become revealed throughout the body of the essay, which is the evaluation and analysis section. So that's got the bracket around it and the ... And basically I'm saying use as many paragraphs as you need. And what I'm trying to encourage you to do is think of paragraphs as cohesive chunks of information, and think about that topic sentence as the controlling idea for that paragraph, the thing that gives that paragraph focus and cohesion and unity. And so this is where you want to mention your criteria one by one in the topic sentences of your body paragraph. So one of the best things I like about this restaurant is the quality of service. So I've clearly indicated my criterion for that paragraph in my topic sentence, and then I'm going to talk about the quality of service throughout that paragraph. So you will see once you start doing this that everything becomes, very cohesive, controlled, that paragraphs are cohesive chunks of information and not just this sprawling plot summary, which I've seen too much in many of these drafts. So use as many paragraphs as you need for the evaluation analysis section. Mention your criteria in the topic sentence for each paragraph, what you're talking about in that particular paragraph, and keep it all cohesive. And then after that evaluation analysis section, we oftentimes have recommendations for improvement. This was a great movie, but it would have been even better if ... And then you fill that in. So great restaurant, but my experience would have been even better if ... And you fill that in. So this is very typical of any type of evaluation. I think, as I mentioned in my introductory lecture, even a performance review on the job. They might say you did great during this review period, and they'll have things that they want you to work on for the next review period. And so those are kind of the recommendations for improvement. And then we have a conclusion that just wraps up the analysis. So what I want to do at this point, I have a few more slides here with some questions to consider. Okay, so these next two slides go together, and then I've got two more slides that go together. So what is the genre of the thing that you're reviewing? So it's not just a movie, but is it a Western? Is it a romantic comedy? Is it action? And so when we think of the genre of the thing that we're reviewing, then that leads us to the characteristics of that genre. So let's figure out what those characteristics are. And those characteristics are oftentimes your criteria for evaluation. So that's the next question. What are your criteria? The characteristics of the genre may provide some of the criteria for evaluation. What is your overall thesis? Sometimes your statement of thesis, like I said with the introduction, we kind of have a placeholder thesis statement there. And sometimes we actually say it strongest in the conclusion in a review. Okay, some more related questions. What is your rating system? So look at the website that you're targeting for this online review, and what type of rating system do they use, and how do they present it? So we want to emulate that. Who is your audience? Again, we talked about that already, but back to the site that you're targeting for publication of this, and what do you know about the people who go to that site? So how much can you assume they already know about your topic? Maybe a little out of order. Where do you plan to publish your review? What are some of the features of their review site that you'll need to try to replicate in your final document? So I'm thinking multimodally here about, the banner, use of color, the formatting of the text, use of product images or other images, how they present their rating system, etc. And again, maybe slightly out of order here, what evidence do you have to back up your criteria? So as you mentioned those criteria, how are you going to support your claims, basically, about those criteria? So, okay. So let me, I think I had this in the worksheet that you guys did, but I also had some additional questions. So these are based on the characteristic features of a review essay. So that's what you're seeing underlined here. Relevant information about the subject. Is all the information that the writer includes relevant to the topic? What's not relevant? What's not included that should be included? Okay, criteria for evaluation. I think we've talked pretty well about that. A well-supported evaluation, so we're going to back up those criteria with supporting evidence. Attention to the audience's needs and expectations. So we kind of talked about that in the past couple of slides. And an authoritative tone. So is the writer talking down to the audience or over their heads? How could the tone be improved? The ethics of reviewing. I mentioned advertising or PR language. And then a couple of more questions I had for you. How is the document organized? Is it easy to follow with clear transitions? How well does the writer use multimodal features? So maybe we're talking about this for this next review. Everything I've seen up to this point has been just the written text. So now we're going to make it a multimodal text and make it look like like a website. I covered that in a previous lecture about how to do screen captures and insert these things into your Word document. And then when we get close to the end, we're going to save that Word document as a PDF. And then when we look at the PDF in a PDF viewer like Adobe Acrobat, it tends to set the document very wide from one edge of the window to the other. And so it kind of looks like a website at that point. And that's the effect that we're after. How could the use of multimodal features be improved? And then the last question, just thinking more in terms of the multimodal aspects of it. Study the intended publication site carefully for their multimodal features that could be included in the review. So those are my concerns about your rough drafts, and hopefully that's helpful. Revise your text in light of everything that I've said so far, and also it's time to start putting those multimodal aspects into your document. So I will post some information about wrapping up the semester as well. So that's all I've got to say at this point. Good luck revising your drafts and inserting those multimodal aspects into your essay. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me, and we can also set up a conference to talk about things. So thanks for listening, and I'll be talking to you soon.